Hello there, I'm Nick, and this is the Game Apologist, where we look for the good in bad games. 2017 has been one of the greatest years in gaming history. Indies are flourishing, spectacular new IPs reminded us we don't always need sequels, but we also have sequels reminding us that the best can get even better. A fantastic new system was released, Skyrim's still here, and we've seen the return of some of the most beloved platformers in gaming history. 2017 has been so good to us that even Sonic the Hedgehog has been welcomed back with open arms. And then Sonic Forces came out. You just had to screw this up, didn't you? For the uninitiated, Sonic Forces is the latest in the long-running series, this time bringing a darker tone as we see the world taken over by Dr. Egg, just let us call him Robotnik for the love of God, man, and it's up to Sonic, and not Sonic to take it back. Gameplay is split between these three, or sometimes two characters at the same time, and also features the return of the popular boost formula, as well as a handful of momentum-based classic platforming with classic Sonic. The game also features the third character, an avatar you can create yourself. You guys remember when this game was coming out and we all thought it was Bubsy? God, how ridiculous that would have been. Who would want Bubsy back? Who would want Bubsy back? Who would want Bubsy back? Who would ask for this? Why did you do this, dude? Now the avatar plays a lot like modern Sonic, with levels split between running corridors and 2D platforming, but it swaps out the speed boost for a grappling hook that lets you do whatever a spider can, as well as a wisping gun that mows down enemies in your favorite flavor of death.
Red, orange, green, blue, and turquoise.
So they have something for every kind of fan in this one game. The boost gameplay has been gone long enough for it to be missed, Classic Sonic is here for us old school fans, and DeviantArt gets to throw all their cringy creations into this new avatar character. Even the often overlooked fans of the early 2000 days get some love with the return of the darker, more serious storytelling. In theory, this sounds like all signs are pointing to the perfect package for Sonic fans. But if you've been a Sonic fan as long as I have, you come to see these as warning signs. Look at all the different ways they can screw this up. As quick as critics were to praise Sonic Mania, they were just as quick to jump back on the hate train with the release of Forces. But to be completely fair, not everybody says this is a totally terrible game. It's divisive, certainly, but I feel a lot more people are more about this game than anything else. It's Sonic Team, what were we really expecting? This was never gonna be a masterpiece, and casual Sonic fans seem to like it okay. Even Jim, Sonic Colors is a 4.0 Sterling, likes this game, which is... Man, I like this guy's videos, but I just can't peg his tastes at all. Never mind. Truth be told, it might just be getting a harder time coming off the heels of Sonic Mania. Forces feels like a rushed sequel to Sonic Generations, and if this came out a year after that game, I feel angry fans would be much more forgiving on this title. But this came out 6 years later, even though it feels like a rushed sequel that came out 6 months later. Despite that gap in time, this game is worse on almost every single level. Hey Sonic fans, we heard you were getting sick and tired of seeing Green Hill Zone in each and every game we've been releasing, so we're gonna put it in this game in 3 separate levels. Great! Not that it's gonna play anywhere near as well as literally any other version of this same stinking level you've seen for 25 years. And if you weren't tired of Green Hill, don't worry, you can also be tired of Chemical Plant Zone. And the Death Egg's back for some reason. But maybe I'm exaggerating the overuse of Green Hill. I mean, these levels are so short, they almost combine to a normal length level in any other video game. Yep, in a game series that literally rewards you for being able to blast through levels in under a minute, fans are complaining about these levels being too short. See, the thing about being able to speed through older Sonic levels is the fact that you needed to really understand the game's mechanics and level layout to make the best time. It wasn't likely you'd roll through any of these stages that quickly on your first run through. In Sonic Forces, not only is that a very likely possibility on your first playthrough, the game starts you off recommending hard mode. Even with that, you're probably going to end that level with an S ranking. There's little to no effort required for a solid chunk of this game. And look, maybe this is weird and just me, but a game starting me off in hard mode is telling me that it's just bunk from the beginning. Hard mode's usually an excuse for replayability, returning players who've mastered the mechanics of the game and want a little bit more challenge. When your hard mode's the standard and it's not hard, what's even the point of having a normal mode at all? So 6 years after the beloved Generations, we get levels that are bland, short, and reuse assets from those older games. I mean, there are new sections here, but like the infamous Sonic 4, while they show you some really cool stuff going on in the background, they don't really utilize it in the main course. even if this game had fantastic level design, getting through them would still be a chore, as the only real challenge in this game is fighting these god-awful physics. I've said it before and I will say it again, I still feel they nailed Sonic's movement in the original Sonic Adventure game super hard. He had a nice sense of momentum and had this big floaty jump that gave you complete control over where he landed. Game isn't perfect, but I thought the controls were a fantastic transition from the 2D mechanics. But all these years later in this game, when you make these characters jump, it feels a lot like throwing a large rock and hoping you know where it's going to land. I've died more often from missing jumps onto platforms than any other way in this game. Yeah, it's hard to get on the platforms in this platforming game. And it doesn't help that you have to keep swapping playstyles from level to level. Play as modern Sonic and all you really need to do is boost to beat the level. Switch to the avatar and it feels about the same, but you can't boost. Instead you have these grapple points that are sometimes automated, and then you have this gun that just never runs out of ammo. I don't even know why it's here. But then you also get levels where you play as Sonic and the avatar at the same time, where you can combine all the abilities, which makes me wonder, why didn't you just have one character? And within these levels, you'll once again be swapping between these running corridor sections and these clunky 2D sections, which, I'll be real with you guys, I've never liked. The shift is jarring, the gameplay is clunky, and it's even worse in Sonic Forces since precision has been thrown right out the window. It just makes me wish I was playing the classic games. Oh, but lucky me! This old school fan has to shut his stupid mouth because classic Sonic is back for a handful of levels. And now he plays like trash. So if the 2D sections within the other levels weren't jarring enough, you now have to completely switch up playstyles every now and again with this terrible emulation of old school Sonic. It pretends to have momentum, but it clearly doesn't. It's trying to be the classic games without ever really understanding what made them so great, which isn't a good look when you release 2 months after one of the greatest games in the series. And I'm sorry guys, it is fair to make those comparisons. Not only did this release 2 months after Mania, but this is a continuation of Mania's story. The Sonic in Mania is the same Sonic in Sonic Forces. You remember how I said Mania felt like an alternate dimension where the 90s never ended, the Saturn got a good Sonic game, and his franchise didn't become a joke to all of the gaming world? Well, it's like that Sonic popped over to the real world and saw what actually happened to the series. Behold, Sonic! Behold your legacy and weep!
I'm out of here!
Oh god, take me with you! I can't believe I'm saying this, but this game would have been better without classic Sonic. I mean, he really doesn't even add anything to the story. Not that it's a story worth telling anyway. I mean, yeah, the story's simple enough. Dr. Omelette is taking over the world. Go get it back. I could lambast the sorry attempt at a darker tone, point out how ridiculous it is to have all these rainbow animals talk about coping with death and survival, because really it is quite silly, but my actual problem is the missed potential. So I'm gonna have to go full Sonic dork here, so bear with me. Bear with me, because you can actually be a bear in the character creator. Oh my god! This is not the first time we've seen Eggman take over the world in this franchise. Way back in the day, us American kids were treated to the Sonic Saturday morning cartoon. In this show, Robotnik had taken over Mobius, the name of Sonic's planet. A massive amount of the world had been turned into a dreary industrial wasteland, the citizens having been roboticized, which is a method of exactly what it sounds like, turning organic beings into robotic slaves, a terrifying twist on using animals as a power source from the games, and a clever way to avoid mass genocide of fuzzy animal people in a kids show. Sonic was part of a ragtag group called the Freedom Fighters, the last line of defense between Robotnik and his complete rule over Mobius. The show ended after only a couple of seasons, but would spiritually continue on in the Archie Sonic comic series, which lasted all the way up until late 2016. It wasn't great at first, but over the years, thanks to clever writing, they managed to bring in a brilliant mix of the best ideas from the American side of Sonic's history with the more game-centered designs from Japan. So now, at the end of 2017, the longest running comic based in video games is finally dead, as well as the fantastic characters and plots created for American fans, and what have the games incorporated from such a storied history? Chili dogs. I mean, that sounds like a terrible choice of food to pick up right after a run, but I'm sure his metabolism can handle it. Are you serious, Sonic Team? Are you serious? You can reference this, and this? But you guys couldn't bring nothing from the show or comics? This would have been so easy. You have all the rights to all these characters, and you couldn't even give a name to a stupid world. And oh my god, this level select is a mess. I'm sorry guys, I know I'm being super biased here, but this game's world is so bland. It has no identity, literally none. They don't even have the guts to call it Earth, let alone Mobius. And all these generic placeholder soldiers could have easily been the Freedom Fighters. We are told the stakes are high. We are told things are dire. And I would probably care if this was the third act to a much longer game leading up to this point, or like the third game in a trilogy. Even with everything on fire, Eggman never actually feels like a threat. You just jump from one thing to the next until the game unceremoniously ends. There's even a point where Infinite sends our heroes into some negative dimension, and then we're like 2 minutes later. There's no lasting effect to any of this nonsense. Yes, I know, kids game, but if you're gonna take a darker tone, then own it. The cartoon and comics weren't perfect, but the dark tone made sense for the narrative. Things were dreary, but Sonic was like this bright blue beacon of hope who stood out amongst this drab world. Even the other freedom fighters had muted colors, making our hero stand out that much more. And Robotnik was terrifying. He had the presence of Darth Vader when he walked onto the scene. In this game, Eggman is as cartoonishly silly as ever. Look, I know this seems silly. I'm not saying I need to make a bunch of callbacks to old cartoons. My point is, you can tell an engaging narrative that makes you care about characters, even if they're walking, talking animal people. And I wouldn't care about this story so much if it wasn't in my freaking face the entire way through. If they're gonna put so much focus on this stupid story, then make me care about the world and its inhabitants. 2 out of your 3 playable characters don't even speak. I've always thought the silent protagonist in a world full of chatterboxes was always really weird, but at least you could stay consistent. And yes, I know why classic Sonic or the Avatar don't speak. I'm just saying this mixture makes no sense. There's no focus. Is this an end-of-the-world narrative that culminates in an ultimate showdown between 2 enemies? Is this a continuation of Sonic Mania, focusing on the power of the Phantom Ruby across all worlds and how it needs to be stopped? Or maybe it's a tale of a fearful little nobody who rises above all the odds to fight alongside the greats and save the world? Well, yeah, it tries to tell those stories, but it tries to tell them all at once, and it stumbles. If this had been organized into 3 separate campaigns in the style of Sonic Adventure, then I think you'd have a much more compelling narrative, or in this case, narratives, and you'd have time to get a handle on the different playstyles and physics, instead of having to jump to another character every 2 minutes. And then maybe having 2 mute characters wouldn't be so jarring. But as it stands now, I don't even care about the character who never shuts up. Modern Sonic blathers on and on, even with the world falling apart around him, and I don't really think he cares. Let me show you what I mean. At the start of the game, Sonic is captured and tortured for 6 months. All of his friends think he's dead. Yes, I am serious. I am not kidding. So what kind of sad, broken state is he in when we finally see him again for the first... Exactly the same. He's exactly the same. Not even a quill out of place. This isn't a kid's game, come on, man. In the cartoon, he was allowed to cry. He was allowed to react. He was allowed to feel. Here, he's just a toy with a button you press to spew out one-liners.
Dramatic moment.
Shut up! And going into this game, I was genuinely interested to see how he'd interact with all these other characters. All of his old enemies get their own trailer. Chaos is back. Shadow switch sides. Metal Sonic's always a pleasure to see. And then Zebra? Who cares? This guy's back too. Oh, and then it turns out they're all just copies. Spoilers, who cares? Who cares? They're not even here. And you only fight 2 of them. Chaos is back. I want to fight Chaos. Why not fight Zebra, Zack, whatever? So what do? Do I just jump? What is happening? How does this stupid bee work? This game never shuts up at any other point with stupid hints and other nonsense. Why can't you tell me? And the new guy, Infinite, seems pretty cool, but what is he? Is he a creation in the lab? A faceless jerk who throws a temper tantrum because the other emo kid called him a name? Because it's not exactly clear on that. Oh, but they tell you in the stupid comic book they released on the internet. I don't care. I don't care. For real, as stupid as his reasoning is for hating Shadow, at least there's something of a rivalry there. But in this game, you only fight against Infinite with Sonic or the Avatar, which I guess has a history because he was scared. What? Who cares? Who cares? You just beat him and he leaves. Who cares? Spoilers, shut up! And speaking of this create a character crap, it's dumb. I don't like Avatar characters. I don't like them. It feels like pandering fan fiction. This cringe-inducing nonsense. You're just best buddies, hanging out with my best pal Sonic while the world's falling apart. Sonic doesn't even know your stupid name, you stupid idiot, stupid face. Everything this game tries to do, we've seen done way better within its own franchise. I've seen better stories told with these characters in every other medium. If these games are gonna make me sit through a tale, then hire somebody who knows how to tell a decent story. You've had the longest running comic series for any game character. That broke Guinness World Records. There have been countless TV shows, and there's a fairly decent one running right now. It's been long enough. Sonic games can do better than this. And story aside, the gameplay. What happened here? These are the same people who made Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. They advertised that before we saw anything else in this game. And it doesn't help that this game released 6 years after the last game featuring this gameplay. 2 months after a Sonic game that cost a fraction of what this one did and also fared way better with fans and critics. And only a week after Mario's glorious return to 3D. I said it in my first video that I was worried they would screw something up before the release of this game, and here we are. And I also ragged on Super Mario World for like 3 minutes. That's one of the greatest games ever made. I did that for you, Sonic. I said Mario made dinosaurs lame. And what does Nintendo do? Oh my god. Sega, what are you guys doing over there? I just want these games to be good. Sega, this is one of the last things keeping you relevant. Figure it out. Ugh. Okay, sorry. Normally this would be much easier to shrug off the bad if this was some random bargain bin game that I picked up for $1, or something that's been notoriously crappy for years, but that's just not the case here. This is a relatively new release in a series that's been given so many second chances to right the ship, a series I've been a fan of my whole life. So I'm going to be a little bit harsh when they screw things up. And the way I make it sound, this sounds like the worst game in the world. But that's just not the case. I'm just frustrated. I've seen these guys do better, and I expect better. But let's say you're not some grown man complaining on YouTube about a furry blue boy. Let's say you don't really care when this came out compared to other games in the franchise. Or maybe you're just a parent trying to find something cheap for their kids. Maybe you just want to know how this game stands on its own. Is the game as broken as I make it out to be? While the physics aren't perfect, and while the story is bland and all over the place, it's still fine. It's absolutely playable. Now granted, if you're trying to get this for your kid and you're expecting a Sonic game in the style you grew up with, you're probably going to run into a situation where you're asking yourself, did that little red rat boy just say Sonic's been murdered? But hey, look, they've pulled this stunt like 3 other times before, and it's gotten a lot weirder than this, so I'm sure you're not scarring your kids too much. Jokes aside, I do feel this particular Sonic game is going to resonate just fine with kids. Yes, the levels are annoyingly short, but I do feel the length of them will go down better with a younger audience. And they do get a little lengthier in later portions of the game. But for the most part, these levels usually focus on one particular gimmick. So if you like the water slide, well, you can just jump right to that. And speaking of the levels, there are some cool ideas going on here. You can tell a lot of work went into the aesthetics of each area. The white cityscapes look slick, a jungle casino is a nice mix of old tropes, and I love how it looks. And while Chemical Plant and Green Hill have overstayed their welcomes, seeing old Sonic stages in an almost post-apocalyptic setting is actually kinda cool. I mean, that's the closest I got to caring about this world and its destruction. They offered some new looks at old favorites. Flying over frosty refineries and Chemical Plant felt like they grabbed environments straight out of the Fallout series. And gripes aside, I have to admit, this old fan likes seeing Death Egg again. They basically recreated the Death Egg zone from Sonic and Knuckles, which was an absolute treat for me. And yeah, look, classic Sonic doesn't play as well as he does in Mania, or Generations. I still always enjoy seeing that little Potbelly version, no matter how out of place he is. As for the other characters, modern Sonic isn't quite as fun as I remember, but if you like the boost gameplay, this does the job fine. And the Avatar, well, like I said, I don't like custom characters in narratives. I'd rather see a character grow, have an arc, something, whatever. For me, the Avatar was the low point of the game. Didn't like the stages, and I don't like this cringe-inducing power of friendship crap. But I also understand why people absolutely adore this character. Look, when it comes right down to it, the Avatar was a brilliant play. The Sonic fanbase is fairly notorious for their fan-made characters, and it only makes sense to capitalize on that. And as Jim, how do you like this more than colors, Sterling, pointed out, in a world full of loot crates and microtransactions, Sonic Forces practically drowns you in customizations for your character. Even after beating the game and hopping back in to capture some more footage for this video, I was still being thrown gloves, shoes, and bodysuits like a party store was going out of business. The appeal of the customizable character is, well, the customization. And while I feel there was more they could do in terms of options, this is certainly a healthy start. Even I had a lot of fun mixing and matching clothes. And hey, even if you've never wondered what it'd be like to be best friends with Sonic while you're bird people, you could just do what I did and design them off of real pets. That's what I did, because Ghosty Ghost is the ghosty most. Hi baby boy, do you want to run around with Sonic the Hedgehog? No, because that'd be really weird. But hey, that's still an option. The rest of the cast is a little more melodramatic than normal, but hey, it was still nice to see them emote. or be here at all, really. Sonic's cast has been downplayed pretty hard for the past decade, and I can't really blame Sega for that, but it feels like they're slowly being reintroduced to the series. Tails actually gets a story about coping with loss and connecting with classic Sonic. Knuckles gets to step up into a leadership role, which is a nice change of pace from that. The others get some screen time, but obviously the main attraction is the 3 playable characters. In terms of these 3, I've got to admit, it's been fascinating checking out other reviews, because nobody seems consistent on which one is their favorite. Some feel classic Sonic is the worst, while I've heard others praising him for being the best part of the game, and same with the Avatar character. Some feel it gets way too much attention, and to others, I'm sure it's the entire reason they bought this game. Modern Sonic seems to coast by without too many people feeling one way or the other about him, but what about me? I've moaned and complained and played Apologist for all 3 of them. So which do I feel is the best playable character in the game? Well, to me, there's only one obvious answer. Seriously. No, seriously. Look, I've seen all the other jokes, I get it. I know how annoyingly close this game was to being Shadow the Hedgehog 2, but okay, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think this would have been way better if this was the sequel to Shadow the Hedgehog. I like this character, alright? I don't care if you feel he's the bringer of the Sonic apocalypse, but I think he looks cool. I think his stereotypical stoic anime rival attitude is a nice change of pace compared to the rest of the happy-go-lucky animal people. I like Shadow, and this game would have been much better if they kept the focus on him. So this game allows you to grab some free DLC in the form of a prequel story called Episode Shadow. These are 3 levels where you get to play the Edgehog, and maybe it's because I had already beaten the game at this point and had a better handle on these wonky physics, but I felt that these 3 levels were some of the best design in this entire game. They were still short, but they provided a little more variety and challenge to the point where I didn't really notice. They also show the origin of Infinite here. Kind of. I mean, it's lame, but like I said up front, it at least establishes some form of connection between characters here. In the main game, all these relationships are so disjointed. Sonic becomes best friends with your stupid avatar, while his actual best friend thinks he's dead for half of the game, so he connects with an alternate version of Sonic who is completely disconnected with everybody else in this world, and none of them have a connection to this new villain. And like I complained about earlier, none of them have any established connections to all these fake villains. But here in Shadow's story is the one place they establish any kind of beef, and I would have loved to see that expanded on. Focusing on Shadow would have provided, well, focus. And since he's not Sonic, you could have slowly introduced new mechanics through the game that Sonic would never have been allowed to use, such as the Whisk Gun, which feels similar to that other Shadow game without it being a real gun. Sega, seriously, what were you thinking? I mean, come on, look, even the title of the game would have been better if they called it Shadow Forces. It's a tad generic, but you have to admit my point stands. Even the logo's in his color scheme, come on! I know this is Sonic's 25th anniversary and the name sells, but we already had Mania to celebrate the legacy. How cool would this game have been if they'd scaled back all this extra nonsense and focused on Shadow taking back the world from his new rival while Sonic was out of commission? That sounds kinda cool. This game could have been Shadow's redemption. Also, seriously, where was he for those 6 months? Oh well, that's just my take. Maybe this DLC was testing the waters to see if the public would take to it. Well, I for one did. And hey, I'm also happy to report that the music's pretty great. It doesn't always work for me. I could do without vocals in most of these tracks, and classic Sonic stages just make me sad. But when they nail it, they nail it. While Infinite seems to be a bit divisive among fans, his theme certainly isn't. I mean, listen to the covers from this one song.
When everything you know has gone through.
And that's kind of how I feel about this game overall. When they nail it, they remind us why people fell in love with this kind of Sonic game. It's a cinematic, adrenaline-fueled roller coaster at the best of times. And while it never flies completely off the rails, it's definitely in need of a tune-up. Look, fellow Sonic nerds, I'm a classic fan first and foremost, and I was not happy with this game when I first finished it. Ultimately, I'm still not very happy with it, but that doesn't mean I want the 3D games to get wiped off the face of the planet. We can have good Sonic games regardless of which kind is your favorite. And we can have good Sonic stories told regardless of the media you enjoy them in. This game could have been, should have been the great uniter for Sonic fans, instead of a physical reminder of how disjointed it is. And I get it, people writing on this game too hard might mean that we don't get to see the boost formula again, or maybe the classic games are all we get from now on, and maybe you're not the biggest fan of those. But like I've said, I've seen these games do way better than this, and they need to evolve. They shouldn't be making something that's worse than a game that they created 6 years ago. Regardless of its classic or boost or adventure, I just want these games to be consistently good. And giving them constant passes whenever they deliver subpar content is not going to make that happen. There are really cool ideas in this game, and I hope they expand upon them. But I'm back to being cautiously optimistic. Unless they do something truly amazing, the next game from this team won't be a day one purchase from me. And for real, we can all agree that having Super Sonic as paid DLC is complete garbage, right? I mean, the social media team was making fun of loot crates and they still put crap like this. I mean, come on, man, it's the exact same animations from the last game. Well, that's really all I have to say. Ultimately, yeah, I'd say this is a meh game. I didn't hate it, but I wish I didn't spend $40 on it, especially since it's already on sale. And clearly Sega knew they had a bit of a dud on their hands too. They didn't even release preview copies. Get as defensive as you want, but this team clearly knew that they'd screwed up along the way. But yeah, as for this Sonic fan, I'll come back to it eventually, and I'll have some fun with it. I don't just want to play classic Sonic games, but until they give me something better, I'm just gonna go back to Sonic Mania.
Gonna save you now.
It's becoming unbelievable. Spit on Bolas. Why are you running? Why are you running? Why are you running?